You all wanna be round a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
Hey, guys and gals. Welcome back to the Crimson Dynasty, where we have some of the hottest takes. Look, we are midweek. We have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. But before we get started, I just wanted to give everyone who's new here a quick overview of who we are. So, we are the sister channel of the Bama Standard. And I know a lot of you have been here before, but we welcome those who are new and then welcome back to the ones who've been here before. And we really hope that you light up that live chat tonight because we have a lot of stuff to discuss. And I really hope that we have enough time to hit all the topics, but we're going to do the best that we can. But before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Workspace Solutions. So if your business needs a digital presence or a full-fledged marketing team at an affordable price, be sure to contact them. So you can actually Google them and just check out their website and what they have to offer, and you can contact them directly. So we do have our guest co-host, Coach Smook here, and y'all know how we've been doing it the last few weeks. We've been going in. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. Like, I think Alabama has been, if it's not just in the mouths of everyone, we're at least in everyone's head spaces rent free. Like, that's all I've been hearing about everywhere. Anytime I get on YouTube, it's about Alabama. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about. The nightmare in Jordan Hare, the so-called voodoo that didn't work, because we don't play that over here. So I do want to get things started off and just talk about what went right, but what went wrong in our game against Auburn. We know that, I think going into the game, Auburn was 6-5 or something like that. They had lost a few games, and just a week prior, they lost to New Mexico State. We didn't really think that people needed to really look into that because we know that that's, they didn't care about that game, to be honest. For them, their national championship was playing Alabama, right? And so that's why we saw a different team. And I just want that to be put into perspective because it's been a lot of negativity about how we played, etc. And so I just want people to kind of keep that in mind. But I'll start things out with you, Coach Smook, before I share my take. What stood out to you? I guess the positives, starting with that first. And then what were some negatives, some things that you would like to see us, change and do better in before we play Georgia this weekend?
Some positives that are clear and obvious to this team and what's become their identity is that resilience, the fight factor, the ability to not quit. Even in a game like we saw against Texas, we saw this team get behind, face some adversity, but they never quit. They kept fighting to the last minute, to the last second, to the game was decided, and that was when the clock hit zero. And that's what happened this game because it was opportunities where, calls were missed, especially on big plays. Calls were judged wrongly. You take into account the touchdown call back when they said CJ Dupree was holding on the edge, and they turned around and let it happen on the next drive for Auburn to create a scoring opportunity for them. The Jermaine Burton, no catch, which was clearly a catch. I mean, you when you're looking for that type of completion, when you're looking for the criteria, the first thing they say, if you could see any green between the white and the shoe, then it's a catch, and it was clear that his foot had already touched the ground, so it was those things that could have on a weak-minded or team with a weak psyche, they would not be able to rebound, but this team showed that they were resilient. One of the bad things, you said some of the bad things. I think it was just it was more so not a lack of execution, but attention to detail in some areas, especially defensively. Once again, didn't know that Jaheim Otis was injured coming into the game. And we saw guys who hadn't been in that position all season be put in that position. And it didn't turn on until like the fourth quarter, in the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, when the defensive front started to show up. And when Otis got the spot play in key moments, it showed how much of an impact he makes. So, you don't expect a clean Iron Bowl in Jordan Hare. And when you do have one, it's a surprise. This game definitely it didn't go like I thought it would, being how we came into this game, but it's a Jordan Hare Iron Bowl. So you can't be more than satisfied in what the results and how that game ended. You just can't drop a better script. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it just was crazy. So I was definitely excited with the win.
Yeah, those are all good takes, good points. I think, for me, at least looking at it from the positive perspective, I do feel like our team went in, there were some mental errors to some degree, but I feel like we were still prepared for whatever they, wanted to throw at us. Because we have to remember that when you're playing a team that literally has nothing to lose, like I said, they had already lost like 5 games. So when you're playing a team that has nothing to lose, they're going to throw out whatever they can, and just see what sticks. Now, from a positive perspective, I do like that, in terms of like Caleb Downs and Kendrick Law and the punt return. Jace has some big runs. Unfortunately, we did see him on crutches towards the end. From a receiver perspective, all the guys showed up, Malik Benson, Jermaine Burton, and that was definitely a catch. I think everyone, even, Bama haters, like they knew that was a catch. I think our O-line played really well. Dallas Turner showed up really well. I think Justin Eboigbe, he had sacked Peyton, Thorne. So I think, from a positive perspective, I feel like our guys, they did their job, right? Jalen Milroe, he did his job, of course. Now, looking at some things that we could have done a little better, since I just mentioned Jalen Milroe, I do think that there were opportunities for him to run. There were a couple of opportunities, and I'm just literally like, Jalen, run the ball. Like, I know he had gotten hit in our game against Kentucky, his thigh, and I was wondering if maybe that has something to do with it, but I don't think so, because against Chattanooga, he looked fine, so I was I wasn't sure why he didn't run. I don't know if that was somewhat like a, nervousness or something like that. But my thing is, that's one of your strengths. So you need to capitalize off of that. But there were a couple other things too. We let Auburn run all over us. There were times, especially in the first quarter, the first half, really, we let them run all over us. And we mentioned during our show last week that, I think going into our game, Auburn only had about 350 receiving yards. They relied more heavily on their run game. So because of that, I felt like we already knew that they were a little more one-dimensional. They did, he threw some balls here and there, but I do think that we allowed them to run a little more than we should have. I think there were a couple of missed assignments. You think about like Jalen Key, he was kind of playing a little off in the first half. I don't know what was going on with him. Malachi Moore, I saw some, some mix-ups in the second quarter. So maybe some busted coverage in the third quarter. So it was certain things that stood out. And I wanted to see us play a full 4 quarters like we did against LSU. I think we'll see that against, Georgia this weekend. But I do, I'm curious, especially from a defensive perspective. We look at guys like, the Jalen Keys, we have Devontae Smith back. How do you feel, us going into our game, coming off of a win like this against Auburn? So we consider that Georgia just played Georgia Tech. It was like just an 8-point difference. I mean, Georgia Tech literally ran circles around them. But then we also know that Kirby Smart let certain guys sit out of that game as well. I feel like from a momentum perspective, what you really want to see is, a team like Alabama come off of not just a win, but a victory like we did against Auburn versus, having a game like Georgia Tech. And, because to me, that was almost like another bye week where they didn't really practice or plan. But then that, they were surprised, unfortunately, with Georgia Tech. I mean, they played a little better this season than they've been playing. So I'm just curious as far as, what type of impact do you think this, not even just the win itself, but how we won? What do you think this is going to do for our guys?
First, Cece, it's just a testament to, like I said earlier, who we are as a team. This team is built for adversity, and I think that's what is making Coach Saban realize how this team is just probably one of his best coaching jobs in a while. Has presented the most challenges with developing guys in key areas, in areas where we needed them to develop and have success. It put pressure on staff members, position coaches, offensive line, defensive line, Freddie Roach, and what's the offensive lineman coach? I forget his name. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But the guy from Kentucky. I mean, to have that pressure put on him, I think Jessica's gonna type it in the back chat for me. But Eric Wolford, I knew it was I wanted to say Ewo, but I'll be trying to say the real name.
You could have said that too, though.
Yeah, because the players, they have that right. I don't have that right to call them by their nickname. So listening to their interviews and stuff, you try not to mimic that and you try to be professional. So, but anyways, to have those coaches put the challenge, Robert Balla be put the challenge, which I believe the discrepancies we're seeing at the inside linebacker level aren't on Balla. Trez Marshall in the game is just not a productive thing for us. Him having heavy amount of snaps is not a productive thing. And like you said, it was just times where guys were put in positions where they look uncharacteristic because guys who weren't in there the week before when the tone was really getting established, they're back out there. Jalen Key, like I said, Trez Marshall being out there. I mean, that Payne and Latham having to play those extra minutes, extra snaps because Otis was hurt. You saw guys be put in situations they weren't used to. And to come away with a win like that in that big of a game and have guys go out there and be able to grow through that process, grow through that adversity, it's going to pay off in a game going against Georgia because you didn't do it against Chattanooga where the talent gap was different. You were playing against other 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, high-quality guys that were lining up across from you on that offensive line if you're Bama defensive lineman, and vice versa on the offensive line versus their defense. Secondary, middle linebackers. You got to see a quality group of talent in the biggest game of the year for them, like you said, and you came away with positives to build off of. It wasn't all bad. The scoreboard doesn't tell really how good Alabama played. We had 14 points taken off the board once again, and we were able to win by 3, 27-24. So yeah, it's just one of the things you just kind of live with, that being chalk it up to it being an emotional, one of the most intense rivalries. And you look forward saying we handled that with class, with the determination that we did. You can't be more excited and more prepped for to see how we take on this challenge in Georgia, who by far is the best team, outside of us, the best team I've watched on film, in college football this season.
Yeah. Yep. All good points. And one thing I do want to mention, because it really like annoys me when I see them playing that little raggedy clip, that little ghetto clip of 2013 when, basically I think it was like a kick return or whatever when we were kicking the field goal.
Kick six.
Look, I'm so tired of them showing that, and I'm so glad that, and it's ironic, it's 10 years later that now they have something else to show right now. Like now they can play this. And one thing that they failed to do, every time they show that old play, that little ghetto play that they like to show from 2013, they never show what happened after that. So we can talk about that too, because after that they went on to play Florida State in the national championship and they lost. So I think like if you want to show it, show the full picture. Don't just show that being messy. So that's just a part of my little rant that I have for tonight. But I do want to ask though, it was so ghetto. Like it was ghetto, and it's no reason for that. Like maybe they're just trying to fuel us up and get us pissed off. I don't know, but it works, So hopefully now they'll start showing this play, because this is something that goes down in history, in my opinion. But I do want to know. So we talked about some of the things that we saw, like busted coverage, missed assignments, as far as the defense, and I've been hearing, I guess, like conflicting things about why that was. Do you feel like that was more so defensive play calling, or do you feel like it was the players themselves?
I felt like that was Jalen Key. I've never seen Malaki Moore.
I don't want to say any names.
We're at this point in the season where things like that shouldn't be happening. And even talking about it with the guys last night on Final Whistle, and even with the panel that I do the post game show with, that I've never seen Malaki Moore pass off coverage that obvious without knowing, because he played. They were getting beat up in the run game. I'm pretty sure his key was run support. If his receiver lines up as the slot, I'm guarantee you he's basically shifting down and playing that third linebacker position. Same thing we saw Caleb Downs doing on the other side. Key, who was in on that play as the one high safety off of that shift. There's no way you don't go and play strong side over top. That's just basic concept. And we broke it down on the little board behind me. We had the field up. I had the field background. And I was just saying it, and I was telling people to go back and watch the play. If you look at it, Malaki Moore literally passes, like does the pass off signal as the receiver is going past him. He's not jamming to stop him, just jamming to disrupt and pass off. Jalen Key's eyes were not in the right place. You get motion like that, you have to key that motion, give yourself that extra cushion so you can see the first phase develop. And he did not do that, and it cost us big. And it made Malaki Moore look as if he didn't get a call, but he got the right call. Everybody underneath that had the right call. Why is that flow route, what we call a flow route, release route, why is that so wide open and we got a one high safety not caught up in the run look or anything? So it kind of bothered me to see that, especially this late in the season. It looked like we got some super chats too. We got 2 super chats. Let's see. It says Gavin Kane, 199 super chat said, guys, I don't see us making the playoffs. They put OSU ahead of us. We're going to get into that, Gavin. Appreciate the 199 super chat. And Gavin with another 199. He says, really, we had 28 points taken off TA pick 6. And you right.
It was 4. It was 4 touchdowns. Yeah.
It was 4 total touchdowns. So, I mean, you take Georgia they didn't lose 4. They didn't lose. They didn't win and have 4 scores taken. They had 2 turnovers that they committed and was able to pull it out. So that's why I don't like to listen when they try to do this transitive property thing. Yeah, Auburn, that might be y'all other rival, but they know who they wake up and play for real. They know who they throw it out there for, and it's always against Bama.
Yep. I agree. Now that was good feedback regarding what we saw from the defense. Now I do want to move on and just kind of talk about, the latest rankings were released last night, of course, and I still feel some type of way. I think the rankings are ratchet too. I mean, when we really think about it, Alabama has been ranked number 8, I think, since week 10, so we go on 4 weeks straight where we've been at number 8 and we've seen movement with everybody else. But for some reason, even after beating LSU and Tennessee by 14 points, they keep us at number 8. In my opinion, now I understand why they may have us behind Texas just because we lost to them, but I definitely think that we're better than Oregon. I mean, when you look at the caliber of teams that we're playing week after week, literally every week it's the same thing. Oh, this is the team that's gonna beat, Alabama. Oh, this is gonna, and it's like each time we're beating the opponent, and I feel like we've been doing a pretty good job as far as beating them convincingly. It may not be the style points that we would like to see, but we've been winning. So I do want to get your take on that. Like, we're number 8 right now. We see that Ohio State, I think they're like 5 and Oregon is 6 and Texas is number 7. How do you feel about where we are right now? And is this what you expected to see?
This is not what the football mind of me doesn't expect is to see this when you're talking about how the committee has been a little bit more accurate than this year. Previous years, they've been a lot more accurate when it got to the second to last rankings and the final rankings. They've been a lot more closer to having a more conclusive answer. And I'm looking at it now, top 3, you can't complain. Florida State barely hanging on. That's why they're still at 4, undefeated ACC team. They control their destiny, which they should. Same with Washington, Michigan, same thing. All of these teams have lower strength of schedules than us, and they have 0 losses. So you keep them in the top 4. But when you go to an Oregon team who hasn't, they only play 1 ranked team this year, and they lost to them. 1 top 10 rank, and they lost to them. Ohio State, who just lost to Michigan. They dropped to a spot in front of a team that beat the highest ranking team in Alabama in week 2. Texas beat us in week 2. We was number 4. But they're still at number 6, and Oregon loses to a team that wasn't in the top 5, and they're at number 5. You get what I'm saying? So it doesn't make sense. And to make a case for Alabama, we're the only team that doesn't have a loss to outside of top 10 ranked team. When Texas lost to Oklahoma, they were not a top 10 ranked team. Yeah. Oklahoma was not top 10. Oklahoma was actually number 11, where Texas was previously. So Oklahoma, Oregon, you lost yours early. Why are you not being penalized? Your strength of schedule doesn't nearly match up. I think that strength of schedule right now still at the end of the season is still like 60 something, and nobody above us. Only Texas is the only team above us that has a stronger strength of schedule for the whole season. And they're the only other team that has played ranked. So I'm very disappointed, and it's not fair. There's definitely some SEC hate going on, some Bama hate going on, and it's obvious.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating. Now, but you know what though? I wonder too, because every year there's a different committee, right? But then you see similar things happening every year. And that's the thing that bothers me. So we know Boo Kerrigan has been over the committee, I think, since it was established for the last few years. But it makes you wonder, like, is this a part of what they're about then? Because, on paper it says that they're supposed to look at strength of schedule, XYZ, all of that. We know that, but that's not what we're really seeing happen, on Tuesday nights. And my thing is that you put Ohio State. I understand that they lost to a top 4 team considering their loss against Michigan, but they also have to factor that, which teams are about to play in their conference championship game. I think that's a factor too, because now I feel like the committee is putting themselves in a position where they're going to have to justify the rankings. They're going to have to justify how far up they decide. And this is a whole different thing, but I feel like they're going to have to justify why they move us to where they move us after we beat Georgia. I do think it's good that Georgia is still number 1, but when you think about Georgia beat Georgia Tech by 8, Michigan beat Ohio. So you would almost think that Michigan would have been put at number 1, and I'm not saying that I really care for them to be put at number 1, but I just think that they're trying to be very strategic with it, that now it's becoming apparent biases, and they're putting themselves in a position where they're going to have to really justify some things, because if by chance Florida State comes out with the win this weekend, or if by chance Oregon happens to beat Washington, now what? I think Texas has Oklahoma State. So it's just so many components. And I think they made it harder for themselves because they didn't do it right to begin with, when they first released the rankings. What are you thinking? I can tell you have a thought there.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you because I'm almost inclined to cheer for a Florida State win. I'm almost inclined to cheer for Oregon upset of Washington. I'm very inclined. We need Texas to win their conference. And yeah, Michigan go in there and don't drop the ball, and we beat Georgia. I'm ready to see what type of explanations are put forward when you say the number 8 team, the best one loss, the second best or third best one loss team you have out there in college football. But they have us as the third best because you're still keeping Oregon in front of us, you're keeping Ohio State in front of us, and you're keeping in Texas. But Ohio State's not able to play for that conference, so they can't be better than us.
Right.
You can't even have that claim. You weren't even able to secure your conference. But how do you go and say you got a one loss conference champ in Alabama? You got a one loss conference champ in your greatest team of ever, Oregon. You got your one loss conference champ in Texas, who you're giving so much credit for beating us in week 2. You're giving them so much credit. And then you also going to have an undefeated Michigan, as your number 1 team, and an undefeated Washington. Washington loses to Oregon. So how do you justify kicking Washington for being one loss? How do you justify keeping Texas out as a one loss if you're giving them credit for beating us? How do you justify keeping us out if we're the only team to ever beat the number 1 team in the past 29, 30 games that they done played? So how do you justify that? You can justify putting us in, but how do you justify keeping everybody out? That's going to be curious to see. I mean, there's so many factors and so many scenarios that have to play out this weekend. But coming into this game, I think we've been put in the best position. As horrible as the rankings have been, I'm glad we're at number 8 playing number 1 instead of number 8 playing number 3 or number 2. You get what I'm saying?
I feel you. And honestly, I was thinking the same thing. And I was curious to see like what the playoff committee would do as far as Georgia and Michigan, because you would think now if they were judging everything across the board, because they can't sit up there and say, well, Georgia has a stronger strength of schedule or whatever versus Michigan, because then if that's the case, then that has to be the same across the board. Now, I feel you on what your take is, because it's more so like, well, since they kind of screwed up the rankings to begin with, let's see what they do when if they're put in that scenario. I would say because Oregon ended up beating Oregon State, I would prefer to see Washington win, and I would prefer to see Louisville knock off Florida State since Louisville lost. So it'll be interesting. I think that with them putting Ohio State where they put them, it almost gives them a glimmer of hope. And I would like to think that, that wouldn't be the case, because we have to remember both Michigan and Ohio State ended up in the playoffs last year. Of course, TCU and Georgia. So I almost feel like, and I agree with Paul Feinbaum when he said that I think just like a week or two ago, he was basically saying that he feels like the winner of the conference championship games should be the ones to go. And that just is what it is. Ohio State, they're out. They won't have that additional win, whether it's Michigan or Iowa. And that's it, And so we'll see what happens. I mean, look, they better not play with me. I know I like to call everything ghetto, and I'm gonna keep calling it ghetto. I feel like Boo Kerrigan is acting ghetto, and we need to find a replacement for him. Because if you're changing the committee members every year, but the same thing keeps happening, it's something else that's going on. It's almost like the culture that they created, where they're trying so much to be in control of what happens. But at the end of the day, it should be the best 4 teams. That's what it's about. Period. Nothing else, nothing more. So I don't get where the issue is. I do think it's like some haters, but
it definitely is. Anybody that could sit there and say Oregon deserves the spot, you have not watched Oregon football. They I could put Kentucky over in the pack, and if we base it off the criteria that we're basing it for Oregon, anybody looks good this season. Texas looks like the best team. Alabama looks like the best team. Why is Oregon getting all this respect? And their conference strength doesn't even compare to Big 10, Big 12. They're the 4th when it comes to conference strength. They're number 4. They're not even one of the stronger conferences. So how do they get to be ahead of a team who literally our only loss is out of conference against a team that's playing for their conference championship?
Yeah.
How do we not get credit for that? That's the simplest way I thought about it. I was like, it's amazing how Oregon, they didn't beat Ohio State. They didn't beat Michigan. They didn't beat anybody cross conference. You know what I'm saying? They didn't beat anybody outside of their conference to say that they had an impressive win to keep them ahead of Alabama. We lost to Texas. Texas lost to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has now 2 losses. You get what I'm saying? Like strength of schedule. If we're just basing it off of the first level criteria that the committee is talking about when they're talking about placing us in the position that we are, let's look at it thoroughly on the same platform. Don't even put a face to it. Put the schedules out there. Don't put a face to it, and don't say it's Alabama. Don't say it's Oregon, and just line it up. This team won this game because this team was ranked this team, and see how it plays out, and then unveil the names or the mask. Take the mask off and see who the teams are, because that's the only way you can be fair. Turn the film on and watch the game. You get what I'm saying? If I come in as an Alabama team and I take a offensive that's been ranked number 1 up until they see me and hold them to below our averages minus one category, you got to give me credit for that, because Oregon hasn't been able to do that to anybody.
I agree. And it's almost like every time they pick their little poster child or someone that, like last year, they really wanted to see TCU in. And it's just like, there are strategic ways to, eliminate what's going on right now, but they don't want to do it. And I'm not going to help them do it unless they want to hire me and pay me the money to do it. But, I just feel like there are some things that need to happen. It's not difficult. You would think after what happened last year and a lot of the money that I'm sure they lost when they had Georgia and TCU in there, you would think that would have been like all that they needed to see to make the necessary adjustments, but clearly it wasn't. So, we'll see. I'm not going to get hung up too much on that, because we can't really control it. We just need to make sure to go out there, dominate, play a full 4 quarters. So, but I do want to talk about, our game this weekend against Georgia, the SEC championship game. We ain't new to this, we true to this, but it is like, we can't go out there, feeling entitled or anything like that. Like, we need to, come out there, like I said, play a full 4 quarters. And I do see a super chat from D Hill. Thing no one is mentioning is Bama would be an undefeated conference champ, 9-0 in the SEC. That's the trump card over the other 1-loss champs. Yep. I mean, that's it. Like, look, we see it. I guess, I don't know, the playoff committee, they're just trying to make it harder for us. I was saying before, like a couple weeks ago, that I felt like they were going to wait and see how we play Auburn, and if we beat them, which we figure we would. I felt like they were going to wait until after that to, go ahead and start moving us up. But, they ain't do that. So
you know why they didn't do that? Because they expected us. They wanted us to go in and struggle against Auburn, but they wasn't expecting Ohio State Michigan game to end like it was. I think they were expecting Ohio State to play off Michigan. I don't think they were expecting Florida State to handle Florida. I don't think, and that's what the committee, they forced themselves into that corner. They forced themselves into wishful and hopeful thinking of how this thing could play out, so they can put Alabama back in the 5 and 6 spot and that way when we do beat Georgia, that is justifiable to move us into number 4 or the number 3 is. But now they're going to have to explain how they're going to move us from 8 to 4 or 8 to 3. They're going to have to explain it. You or if they mess around and try to keep us out after we're the only one-loss team with we're the only team in the nation right now with a clean conference record as a one-loss team. Everybody else one loss is in their conference. They have a loss in their conference.
Yeah.
Oregon's one loss is against a conference opponent, and so is Texas. They lost to Oklahoma. That's in their conference.
Yeah.
Ohio State, their one loss is against Michigan. So we don't have a conference loss. And if we go in and beat the best team in the nation, who's also the second or the other number 1 best team in our conference, what else do we have to do? We have a divisional championship won, and we have a conference championship. If you're basing this criteria off of championships won, give us credit for that conference championship and that division. Texas only going to have that conference championship. I don't even think they have divisions over there. So it's like the resume is overwhelmingly in favor of Alabama when you compare it to the other one-loss teams.
Yep. There's never been an apples to apples comparison, and they think with what they're doing next year is going to kind of level out the playing field. I still don't think it will, but we'll see. So, but
Right.
Speaking of Georgia, there are some things that stood out to me. Of course, all of us, we've kind of kept tabs on what's been going on with them just throughout the season. Certain games that they played where they kind of struggled. They had some key injuries, which you never want to see anyone get hurt. Because at the end of the day, this is their careers and this is their future ultimately. So, but I do want to kind of get started there and just kind of talk about some of their injuries. We know that, Brock Bowers, I would say their best receiver, the tight end, we know he had gotten injured maybe a little over a month, 6 to 8 weeks ago, and he's back playing now. I don't know if he played against Georgia Tech, though. I want to say he didn't. And I also know that their other one of their other receivers, McConkey, he didn't play either against Georgia Tech. And I know that they had him listed this week as questionable, something to do with his ankle. They have another guy, Rara Thomas, his foot, but these are certain guys. And the reason why it stood out to me is because I feel like true winners, they don't sit out their best players just because they're playing a Georgia Tech or a Chattanooga. Look at us when we play Chattanooga. We didn't sit out Jermaine Burton. We didn't sit out Jalen Milroe. Like, you play your guys. You don't come up with a reason, for them not to play just so that we can get them ready for the SEC championship. Again, that's not what champs do, and that's why they struggled the way that they did against Georgia Tech, a team that they really should have been able to easily blow out, especially being a defending national champion and being ranked number 1. And that's just my take. But I do want to kind of like, when we talk about Georgia Tech, one thing to consider is that Georgia Tech scored the most points against Georgia this entire season. So that speaks volumes, I think. I think when you really put everything into perspective, I know that they didn't have all of their, the top receivers playing, but, that's neither here nor there, because at the end of the day, if the playoff committee is looking at sheer numbers, then, you look at the numbers, Georgia Tech, I mean, it speaks for itself. But I will say, and I'm going to ask your opinion in a minute, but I was looking at certain games that they played, whether it was UAB or at Auburn, at Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, all these different games. And I noticed that in their bigger games, when they had, Carson Beck, when he threw for over 300, they had 300, receiving yards or more, plus 35 or more rushing carries on the ground, they won by a larger margin. So you go and look at their game against Florida, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. It seemed like when they have, it's almost like a combination of that, over 300 passing yards plus over 35 carries on the ground. They seem to do a little better when they I guess go that route, and you see that type of balance. But then I noticed that when their run game has been limited, that margin was a lot smaller. So go look at their game against Auburn and Missouri, where they only won by maybe 7 or 9 points. So that was something that stood out to me, and a lot of it has to do, I think, with how well the defense that they're playing, how well they're doing. I would say that they haven't played a defense like Alabama this entire season, but what's your take on that? How do you feel about what you've seen so far with Georgia? And do you feel like they've played a defense like Alabama yet?
Georgia hasn't played a team that can match up with them talent-wise across the board. Nobody that they've seen on their schedule. And teams that did have places and pieces that they could kind of mix and match and do something consistent, i.e. Auburn, i.e. Missouri, they had success against them. It's always the talent gap that allows you to pull away when you have instead of just having 3 guys that could be potential first rounders, you got 5 or 6 guys in your defensive line rotation that can be potential first rounders or first. These guys are 4 stars and 5 stars. Same thing with their linebackers. Georgia had to replace they have a true freshman starting at their inside linebacker position, who has, I don't know if he's a true freshman or not, maybe a redshirt freshman, but the kid he's a natural athlete, just been waiting his turn. Like we got guys at Alabama. And to your point, Cece, I don't think that these guys were at a point where they could go. And one thing about Kirby Smart, he's not traditionally, I'm not sure. I don't pay attention to the Georgia program as much. I just go by what people who I know are closely connected and have been historically watching the Georgia football, been connected to the program. One thing about Kirby Smart, he don't play that soft stuff. If you talking about you can't go, if you don't go during practice, if you're not practicing by Tuesday, you're probably not gonna play for Coach Smart, on Saturday. And that means at least doing some, 45, 50% of walkthroughs. Of course, you're gonna be courteous and be you're gonna listen to what the doctors are saying, but the toughness is what that program is built off of. And to have guys like Bowers and McConkey sit out, that to me, that's your best move. I believe if we would have had a knee black or Burton or somebody like that hurt, I don't see them playing or starting against Auburn. I see us trying to spot play them, just like we had to do Jaheim Otis. Jaheim Otis being injured, wondering why he wasn't on the field. I'm like, why is this guy not on the field? And in hindsight, you saying, okay, maybe we got an opportunity with this offense having struggles with Auburn. Auburn's offense struggling throughout the year. You get young guys in to try to see where they at against equal talent, see how they perform in the big moments because you got a healthy. But Otis was really hurt. So you have to allow guys to prove why they're a D1 athlete, why they have their star rating, why they have the Georgia / or Alabama jersey on. Like, you have to present opportunities. And when they're there, because your front runner is 60%, you have to take those chances. And so if anything, it doesn't necessarily change how we was going to approach the game, how we were going to have to scheme up, because in Brock Bowers, you have another tight end in Oscar Delp, who creates the same type of mismatch problems. It just doesn't have the film to support it, but similar build, similar skill set. Honestly, I believe Delp is a little bit more nimble and agile than Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a big Gronk type body build, but he's very slippery, very athletic. Delp is literally, they're the same person, same type build and everything, and you really don't get a chance to take a nap or fall asleep on a play with a team like Georgia on either side of the ball. So this game is definitely going to be key matchups are going to be all across the field. I don't think there's one that you could point out and say this is their advantage or this is our advantage. There are areas, groups where we could see the advantage in matchups, but as far as one-on-ones, this is one of those games where you're going to learn real quick who's winning them, their one-on-ones, and who's losing their one-on-ones. And that's at every level of on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, this is, like we were saying before the show started, this is going to be like a national championship game. I mean, and that's just is what it is. Now, it is worth noting, we know that, Carson Beck is starting. He was there last year, of course, but, he's thrown for 3,500 yards this season. I think he had, 130 rushing yards himself. Now, one thing that stood out to me is that he's only been sacked 8 times this season. You talk about their O-line, that to me, that's very impressive. You look at the amount of times Jalen Milroe has been sacked for different reasons. Sometimes he stayed in the pocket a little too long, different things. But when I was looking at our stats, I have noticed that, and we've seen it in the game where, Jalen is getting sacked a lot less. And we started to see, it's almost like you look at like a graph or whatever, you start to see the decrease in the number or the frequency at which he's being sacked. So I think that's good for Alabama. But that's one thing that I wanted to point out just for the viewers in terms of their O-line, that to me, that speaks volumes. But it is worth noting, when you try to like kind of compare, I know that Jalen Milroe is a lot different than Carson Beck as far as like their skill set and things like that. Jalen Milroe, his longest completion this year in terms of passing has been about 80 yards. Carson Beck, 55. So that's something that, is a little, I think it matters. I think it's important in terms of how we draw up our play calling and our schemes. Now they do have a guy, he's a running back, Dejon Edwards, and he's their top running back, over, I think, almost 800 rushing yards, and he has a little over 150 receiving yards just himself. So I definitely see him being out there, trying to make some level of impact, but I think that's a guy that we definitely need to be on the entire night. Kendall Milton, he's another one. And he had a really good game against Ole Miss. So there are a couple guys in terms of their plays on the ground that I definitely think we need to, watch out for. You mentioned Delp in terms of receiving, another guy kind of like Brock Bowers. So we'll probably see him out there too. But honestly, I just feel like, it all boils down to who came prepared and who's not. We're going to have to look at everything. You talk about the one-to-one matchups. To me, it even go as far as the coaching, because sometimes you'll hear, okay, well, they were just out coached or whatever. It's going to come down to that too. Tommy Rees, everything is on the line. Kevin Steele and Coach Saban, everything is on the line. These guys, we talk about penalties. We had a lot of penalties against Auburn. Some of them weren't warranted. There were certain things that weren't called, and we can be honest and we can be fair. There were certain things that weren't called against Alabama either, but I just feel like that discipline factor, we're not going to be able, we can't afford to have those mental errors and just different discipline issues against Georgia. So I do want to ask, though, from your perspective, how do you feel as far as our defense matching up with their, look at their run game. I feel like they're not as one-dimensional, of course, as an Auburn or other teams. Do you feel like with what we saw as far as play calling and things like that with Kevin Steele throughout the season, do you feel like this is going to be something that is right up his alley? We shouldn't see any issues? Or do you feel like, with what we saw with Jalen Key, for example, or Malachi Moore, against Auburn, are you a little nervous? Like, how are you feeling right now?
I'm not nervous. I think the way that Mike Bobo schemes up the run game is similar to what we do, and how Tommy Rees has developed and building off of our run game. I think they rely more so on keeping everything, that most of their attack inside the box and building off of what they can do from inside the box, meaning in between the tackles. And that's because they're built for what our offensive line is built for, leaning on guys and pushing. They don't do a lot of pulling guard schemes. When they do, it is effective, but that's not something that they're built on winning, built on winning their one-on-ones, like I said earlier. And the easiest way to do that is to be in attack mode. That's in every offensive play call. You could kind of see it. That's their mentality. They want to be physical. They want to create contact. They're not shying away. They're not trying to get to the perimeter, and that you're just stuffing them. And they will start to build on the perimeter run game. But they also extend the run game with the quick screens. Carson Beck, I don't think they're going to give Carson Beck a lot of time to, go through progressions early in this game. I think they want to try. I think they want to try to keep the interior of our defense out of the middle. They want to drag them out the middle. They want to keep their eyes to the sidelines or to the perimeter of the formation. So I was very curious to see how they do that. But like I said, if being that we had a game like we did against Auburn, a lot of they run scheme is just a lot of pulling and a lot of, patience that's required from inside linebacker, a lot of discipline that we didn't get to see from Trez Marshall. We didn't get to see that from him. Even with Jalen Key rolling up as the support safety to fill run gaps as a safety, we didn't get to see it effectively. So hopefully we can get in the film room and clean that up, because I don't think Georgia's going to totally flip their script as far as preparation offensively for what they're going to do against us. At this point in the season, it's kind of just throwing out what you do best, and beating the other guy across the field, across the line, to say, okay, this is what we do best, and you can't stop it. That's the point of the season we're at.
Yeah.
This isn't the playoffs where you get 2 weeks in between, or 15 days, however many days I think it is between the first playoff game and the conference championship. This is a week. This is like another season game, but it means that much more. So the wrinkles and things that have been being built on for their offense, we've more than likely seen them. They've been put in situations to where they can't just be vanilla and win. Missouri, Auburn. I mean, we saw what their team has to do in order to win when they get in pressure, and it always relies on their offensive line keeping that quarterback stood up, and they need to get the ball in Bowers or McConkey. Even as good as their run game is not the explosive part of their offense. It's literally those two that I named, Bowers and McConkey. You don't see Beck throwing 60-yard bombs over the top of safeties and none of that. Is
Mm-hmm.
get the ball in those two guys' hands or one of their receivers' hands and let those guys do what they do downfield. And I think that plays to our advantage. We've been
Yeah.
playing good and coming up and making tackles and not giving up the big breakaway plays. So that plays into our advantage.
Yep, yep. I agree with you. And one thing that I want to note too is that I'm actually glad that it makes me think about that scripture where Paul was saying it was good that I was afflicted. I'm kind of glad that we had the struggles that we did against Auburn, because what I noticed is that every time we've had a game this season where there were certain things that were obvious, like what is going on, whether it was against Arkansas or whoever we played, where there was, a lot of questions. What did we do the week after? Each time we fixed up quickly. Now, I will say Kevin Steele, that's one thing that I noticed with him throughout the season is like if we had a game where like even against Tennessee, for example, that first half where we kind of struggled, I bet you he got it together for that second half. So that's
Oh
one
yeah.
thing that I will say, right? Like every time we've had those type of, kind of rough games here and there, or whatever, that the following week we got it together. So I'm, I feel good about that. But I do kind of want to pivot a little bit to another topic. But before we do that, I think we do have some more super chats. So I see one from Ray Parham. If we can pressure Carson Beck up the middle and on the edges, that would make him uncomfortable and will disrupt their passing game. Look, hey Ray, you might need to go up there to Tuscaloosa and start coaching or something. You need to let them know. slide that in, because I'm hoping that they.
I think Ray has been watching a few shows that I've been on, and he was there for me to explain your best option. You're not going to eliminate receivers. You're not going to eliminate them. You're not going to eliminate Carson Beck's ability to throw. But what you can do is disrupt it. You can disrupt it and create opportunities for things that are, pre-snap that he might see. You have to disrupt phase one. You can't let the receiver get 7-8 yards downfield before you try to create contact. You have to interrupt him within the first 3 steps, within his first release move, and just be disruptive. If Kevin Steele is going to play leverage and play that leverage alignment where he's got cushion, make sure guys know that we're jumping everything underneath. We're jumping everything underneath safeties. You have to be disciplined on the hashes, because I'm telling my guys in front of you to jump everything. We're not sitting on anything. We're jumping everything. We're attacking it, because that's what they want to do. Whether you're attacking the guy off of the catch or attacking the ball while it's being delivered. Attack. Do not sit and wait for anything. Go attack the pulling tight end that's coming out the block for the screen, or the running back that's coming out the backfield. Make sure safety you're watching. Make sure that running back is actually blocking, or that tight end is blocking and not doing a check release and burning us downfield. Like, our discipline is going to be so important for this team this weekend.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I see B Jammin, how important do y'all feel coaching adjustments throughout the game are in this matchup? That kind of aligns with what we were just saying, right? Like, that honestly, that's been the key when you think about our game against Tennessee and how quickly we saw those evident adjustments that were made at halftime. I think it's going to be pivotal, on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. Like, this isn't going to be a game where we can risk playing from behind or having those slow starts. This is something where, similar to LSU, I would almost kind of, mimic what we did against LSU to some degree. Now, of course, Carson Beck isn't Jaden Daniels, but I think that there are some certain components of that game that we can kind of pull from when it really comes to strategizing against Georgia, but I do want to talk about, we were talking about earlier this whole playoff committee and, the rankings and things like that. Well, there are some conference championship games this weekend and some very, it's going to be a matter of whether we get in or not. Like, it's to that extreme. So we know Friday night, of course, Oregon is going up against Washington. That game will be in Vegas. And so we'll kind of have an early glimpse, I'll say, of, what could possibly happen just based off of that game. So, if Washington, if their quarterback is as good as they say he is, we shall see. Because really, it's going to be a matter of 2 Heisman candidates, Bo Nix and I think Penix, them going against each other. They're really battling it out. But I'm curious to see, because we know both teams can score offensively. To me, it's going to be a lot more about what defense shows up and who does what on defense. I would prefer to see Washington win just to hand Oregon their second loss, but more so in regards to us having a better advantage. We have Saturday morning, Oklahoma State and Texas. We have Michigan and Iowa, of course, at night, and Louisville and Florida State at night. So, from your perspective, which games, I'm going to say, give me two that you're more interested in seeing and that you feel like has the better chance of putting Alabama in position to making it in the top four?
Of course, Friday night, Washington and Oregon. I'm going to be watching it. Probably do a game day chat. Be the first one we do outside of an Alabama game. So definitely looking at that one. But I think honestly, all of them have the potential to create some type of buzz. Oklahoma State. We don't know what Oklahoma State team is going to show up. They are going to be at Texas, and they are the team that likes to kind of create these crazy outcomes when they go and play in other people's field. So hopefully Texas pulls out. We need Texas to win, but if they lose, that helps us at the same time, as long as we win and take care of business. And that's an early game. So we actually, as an Alabama fan, you get to basically watch all the main ones that affect you immediately. So Oregon in front of us, losing would be great. Let Washington win out. And also Texas, winning would be good, but to see them lose, that will also be great to have
Either
them move
one.
out of the way. But I think that will be a good game. I really do think that'll be a good game. But I'm definitely going to be watching the Florida State and Louisville game. Hopefully Louisville goes in. I expect Louisville to win, not just because Florida State is Florida State, but they're down to that third string quarterback, and this Louisville offense can put up points. That defense gets scrappy. So I'm really excited to see how far this Louisville team. And with them having their second loss, like you said earlier, that keeps them from, jumping us or doing anything crazy. The committee can't sit there and give them credit for beating an undefeated FSU team who's basically hanging on to that number 4 spot. If if Ohio State and Michigan didn't have to play each other, Florida State would still be at number 5 number 5 because they're number 4 this week. So Florida State would still be at number 5. The committee they've already shown they don't have any confidence in that team.
Yeah, they didn't wait long to show that either. Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting with Florida State. Honestly, man, I thought that Florida, would have had a chance to beat them. I think maybe if if their starting quarterback would have played, I do think that maybe we would have seen a different offense. I mean, they were playing well the first half, but I think because Louisville just lost, right?
Yeah, they lost to
recently.
Kentucky.
Right. So I think with that being the case, I feel like they have a little bit more to prove, and I just think that that'll be a game where in that game I think is in North Carolina, the Florida State and Louisville. So it's it's not necessarily a home field advantage type of game for either of the teams. And so I think there are going to be different components that play into which team shows up. I think you consider Florida State, like you said, they were playing with their third string quarterback, last week or this past weekend. That guy is tired. You know what I'm saying? He's, he's on the team, but he probably didn't expect to have to show up in these big games. I mean, I feel like that last game, Florida State, and then a conference championship, those are some big games to have to play in, but you got to be ready when your number is called. So I definitely think, going into the SEC championship game, like you said, we're going to have 2 games that have already finished before us. So Friday night, Oregon, Washington. But then, the one that Texas won, Texas, Oklahoma State. Honestly, I would have preferred to see Texas play Oklahoma again, but I'm not going to discount Oklahoma State now because I do think, like you said, the game is in Texas, is in Arlington. So Texas kind of has, a home field advantage, but I would be curious to see how that plays out. I would like to see Oklahoma State beat Texas, but if they get into the playoffs, Texas, then I would like for us to play them again. So, that's just my take on it. I still think that, you look at Michigan and Iowa. Between Michigan and Ohio State, what I really wanted to see is the team that had the bigger chance of losing to Iowa. That's who I wanted to win the matchup between Michigan and Ohio State, to be honest. But I also feel like with Michigan, all this scandal, like they can't stay out of the news, even the whole state of Michigan for some reason. But Michigan in particular, Jim Harbaugh always in trouble. It's something always going on. Even at the start of the season, I don't think that they were, to be honest, this may be controversial. I don't feel like they've been penalized enough, because I feel like we don't know to what extent these claims have gone. It could have impacted the fact that they beat Ohio State. We just don't know. So you don't give someone, I just don't think that it's fair. And I think that if it was in Alabama or Georgia that pulled that stunt and all this was in the media about, Alabama or Georgia, it would have been a completely different outcome. I think that for some reason they show favoritism, particularly to Ohio State and Michigan. But of course, one of them had to lose. But it's always a Big Ten school that they seem to show some favoritism to. I don't think that Michigan should, because when you think about it, Michigan being in is going to keep someone out. And with everything that's going on, I just don't think that it's fair. You hear guys like Jeff Saturday say things like, okay, well, do you want to penalize the entire, Michigan football team? These guys show up every week to practice. I'm like, I could care less about that, because you better believe that they benefited from that. I don't care if they were out there on the field themselves stealing those signals. They benefited from it at the end of the day, because, okay, well, on the flip side of that, other teams are being penalized and kept out. So I just really hope that Iowa comes out with the W. I mean, I think they have, if Michigan didn't get their signals, they probably have a good chance winning. I just hate to say it like that, but it is what it is. So, but, this is exciting. I mean, I said earlier in the year, I think back in June, we had the Bama Standard episode where we had our Darius Stewart on, and I said it then. I got a lot of heat when I said it. People didn't, they didn't really agree, and I didn't really care either. But I said I believe that we're going to make it to the SEC championship, and I think we're going to win the national championship. I mean, that's just, I didn't know how we were going to get there, but I felt like that was going to happen, and I still do. I think that once a team finds their identity and they're progressing week after week, what other team, Coach Smoot, can we say in the top 25 that has progressed the way that we have, along with the individual players, Kadyn Proctor, Jalen Milroe? Like, I don't see any other team that's progressed the way that we have. Have you?
And that's being unbiased and looking at what's been on film. Even teams that have seen us, that have watched Jalen Milroe, prepare for Jalen Milroe, they have yet to get Jalen Milroe that they're prepared for on film. They have yet to see that. So I'm just curious to see how they're going to, like I said, like I've been saying, how are they going to justify it? How are they going to justify not getting a one-loss Alabama into the college football playoff this year, when we've clearly been the best team since week 2? Every week we've shown up in the top power rankings, power index, the team that match up the way that it comes down, and how they base these power rankings together. Alabama has faced a top 10, top 15 team every week since that Texas loss, minus Chattanooga. And even when we played Kentucky, who was unranked, but they had a winning record when we saw them, they were trending upward. They were just in the top 25 the week before we saw them. I think they were number 22 the week before they came and played us. So they're going to have to go back and reevaluate how this process of selecting the committee is. But these conference title games that this weekend definitely are going to play a big part in it, Cici. I don't think anyone has lesser meaning right now, because everybody in front of us has to go out and handle business. And then that's when I become worried. But Friday night is the biggest one for us. Oregon losing it kills half of the resume, or half of the issues that we need. Get the hype off of this Oregon train. Washington, I hope, can put it together. They haven't looked great. They haven't looked like the Washington that beat Oregon the first time. Actually, they only won by 3 because of some referee errors and things of that nature. So I'm ready to see how these teams look now that identity has been established, and just see how the game plays out when guys have a little bit more experience. It's hard to beat a team twice. It's hard to beat a team twice in the same season, especially in football. In basketball, you can kind of get matchups and stuff, switch it around. You see a team twice, but football is kind of like you can't just adjust because of one particular matchup. You kind of just live with what you do, and hopefully that you can do it better than what the team is prepared for.
Yeah, yep, agreed. And really quickly, what's your score prediction for our game this weekend against Georgia?
I've been back and forth with the score prediction. One thing about me, I'm a realist when it comes to this game. This is a game where I honestly feel like this is the only team that really presents a problem for us on every level, but not a problem that they can, that they just shut us out. They're not better than us. This is the first team where they can actually match up across the board. Our X factor and our difference is at the quarterback position. We have an elite athlete at quarterback who has a better deep ball, who has a better sense of control, better pocket presence now. Our offensive line, I believe, is a little bit better. Our defensive line does provide more pressure. Doesn't mean that we're better, but our defensive line has provided more pressure. We do lead them by sacks. Our third down efficiency defensively is like 11 spots ahead of them in the top. You were in the top 20. They're right outside the top 20 for those defensive rankings statistically. we kind of match up. Quarterbacks match up statistically. This is a game that the numbers are going to be thrown out the window, and literally whoever can take advantage of that one extra opportunity early and then capitalize on that extra opportunity coming out of the half, that's who's going to handle this game. And that's how this game has went in the past few years. And even when we went in, Alabama went in down to Georgia, a few years back, it was because we was able to take advantage of the two opportunities that presented themselves in the second half. In those tight games, those two, we was able to capitalize off of them. And for some reason, Coach Saban knows how to get his Alabama teams up to play against Georgia. And because of that, I think, honestly, this game comes down, and I called my score yesterday. I think I called it like 38-31. And going back to I think that's what I called it, 38-33. It was something weird because I gave Georgia like a extra field goal somewhere. But I went back and I'm watching this. Man, they have a true freshman kicker this year. Last time Georgia had a true freshman kicker and put the pressure on him, he missed 3 field goals against Alabama. So, and this dome is not, people think because it's in Atlanta, it's all Georgia. If you've never been there, you would never understand.
Bro, I go to every time we play here, I'm there and we be deep. You would think this
inside,
is a home look. And we're gonna stay deep. We're gonna stay deep. I mean, this is a home game for us.
The East Brian Denny East, that's what they call it. They call it they call Atlanta East Tuscaloosa for a reason around this time of year.
The west side is the best side. So
you know what I'm saying? We on the west side, we hold it down, but we gotta take care of the East too. But that's where I'm at with the CC. Like, I feel like this is one of those games where hopefully the media doesn't dictate how these players come out and play. This is gonna be a battle. And if there is some type of crazy offset, it's going to be because somebody did something uncharacteristic and the other team did. And I feel like Alabama is poised to capitalize off of those moments. We've been in so many situations this year. So 38-31, something like that, 38-31. I'm going to go final 38-31, Alabama. And it's going to be off of Milroe accounting for a total of 4 touchdowns.
I'm gonna go 42-28. I'm gonna say 42-28. This reminds me a lot of 2021 when we had Bryce. I think it was 2021 when we had Bryce and we played in the SEC championship game with John Mechie and all of them, Jameis Williams. I'm gonna go with 42-28. And we'll just see. But I do want to, before we close, I do want to let our viewers know that we do have another show airing tonight, shortly after this, Teague's Take, where we have JT and George Teague hosting the show, and they'll actually have Bo Scarborough on as well. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be right here on the Bama Standard Network on YouTube. It'll air at 8:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But be sure to check them out. They have a really interesting show, really interesting take as well. So be sure to just stay on. Just go grab you a snack. If you hadn't had dinner yet, go ahead and get in and, don't go anywhere. But I do want to thank you, Coach Smook, for joining. And do you have any social media that you want to, share, or any shows or anything like that?
Yes, as always, we're here. I'm here on YouTube at Coach Smook on every platform, as a matter of fact. But this week, you all know, this Friday, we'll be doing a live game preview, getting this thing popped off for the SEC championship game. I'm excited because we do have someone lined up, another user lined up. So might not have my guys in the booth this weekend, but that's contingent of this other user being ready to play. So you guys, this Joe Lane guy, can I get him for 2 seconds?
Go ahead. Light him up.
Joe, you haven't said anything. This is a Notre Dame fan on an Alabama podcast trying to talk trash about Alabama and their resume, when Notre Dame, who was clearly getting all this hype preseason, didn't even have a quarterback that was worthy enough to be carrying the type of offense. Y'all gave us this sorry joker, Tyler Buckner, thinking that he was going to come down here. He can't throw a 4-yard hitch. Yeah, I mean, what about football can a Notre Dame fan come in and talk about unless it's from the 60s or the 70s? Like, you guys have been irrelevant. You get all this extra hype because of who you play. It's not who you are, what you put on the field. It's about who you play. The last biggest thing Notre Dame was able to put out was a freaking linebacker who had an imaginary girlfriend that died, and they freaking blew the. Come on, that's the last thing Notre Dame was. Come on now, that's the last time y'all were relevant. So I mean. And it's fine. It's fine. It's cool. It's cool.
Hey, go ahead and hit that button, Coach Smook. Go ahead.
I mean, get your on now, man. You brought your here. Now I'm gonna have to because you ain't here trying to talk. This you get what I'm saying? I'm sorry, Justin. I heard it. I apologize. But Find us here Friday. I'm gonna be doing a live game preview. You can also check me out on Bleacher Report Sunday at 1 p.m. We are going to be doing a reaction to the final college football playoff rankings post-game show here. It should be crazy. Everything coming up. We got clips popping up. Yeah, we that's where we at. I'm not doing OnlyFans tonight. I'm not doing because I want to go in on Joe so bad, but you got it, Joe.
Nah, you got it, man. Look, Brian, why are you always asking for people's OnlyFans? You must have an OnlyFans. Like, what you talking about? Nah, look, we really appreciate all the viewers. If you want to find me on social media, and look, don't press the button now. Don't cuss me out. But if you want to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at beauty_of_intelligence. But look, this is like, y'all, look, I'm looking at the live chat. Y'all line it up. Y'all going in.
I mean, they've been waiting for me. I've been holding off on a lot of these fans. I know I ain't done it in a while. They probably think something wrong with me. I used to, man, it's good.
Joe, take your blank on somewhere. Look, you ain't got nothing better to do on a Wednesday night. But look, we live rent free in y'all's minds, right? Like we know that when we were playing Auburn, y'all jump y'all little selves on our games. They ain't got nothing better to do, right? They ain't got nothing else to watch, right?
Let's go see what Bama's doing.
I ain't got nothing better to do. You could be in Bible study tonight, but you chose to come here.
You chose to come here.
You know, out of everything else that you could have chosen, I mean, we just hope that we entertain you tonight. We hope that you tune in, Joe, to the SEC championship. I'm sure you will. We're going to have a post-game show as well afterwards, so be sure to join us there too. Because look, we love all the support. Get them views up. Make sure you like and comment, Joe. Make sure you subscribe. We ain't even got to block them because look, we ain't got to block them.
Hey, it's all love, Joe. We talking college football, man. That don't change my perspective of you. You just don't know college football when it comes to Alabama. That's it. That's where we're gonna stand on business at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, some people, you know, they get turned. I'm gonna just be real. Some people get turned on by talking like that. Some people get turned on by getting a rise out of people. What you really need to turn on though is this weekend. So make sure you tune in 4 p.m. Eastern. You know, we'll be up in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that's just what it is. Do we need Dan to come preach? Because I heard, Dan, you went in last night, right?
That boy took me on in. I had caught the spirit. I was over here dancing and everything. Well, Dan took Bama Jesus in here and just took us on through there. I was like,
man, Dan put that holy water out there. Look, we might need it. Look, Dan, light up that chat, man. We just need to, you know, we're gonna have to pray for him. But anyway, well, look, we appreciate everyone who's joined. Thank you for being so active and engaging in the chat, though. We really appreciate it. Joe, you can't handle it, but you know, you can keep talking though. We appreciate the support. That's all it is. But anyway, you know, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to come back next Wednesday. Of course, we're gonna have a great show. You know, I hope to see everyone back on, and be sure to have your friends and family come join, because it's all love at the end of the day. I feel like a lot of us share the same sentiment. So be sure, like I said, to check out Teague's Take tonight. It'll be on shortly, actually, in the next hour. So be sure to catch that and roll tide, and we'll see y'all. We'll see y'all this Saturday after the game. Roll Tide.
Yes.